Hello, greetings from Hyderabad. Today's event focuses on successful Sitecore Go Live planning presented by Kelly Rusk, hosted by Vishal and Yamini. Thank you. Over to you, Kelly.
Thank you. Good evening, all. I hope you're having a good day or had a good day today. Today we're going to talk about successful Sitecore Go Live planning. And Sitecore and a lot of enterprise applications, we find that often the simple steps are the ones that are missed because you don't know where to start. So today we're going to walk through some scenarios and talk through some of the importance of, the risk of not Go Live planning, how to create a successful Go Live team and making sure you have the contact information, really dive into the soft launch methodology, which is really the cornerstone of being successful for Go Live, communications and business readiness plans, our pre-launch activities, because we want to make sure we have everything lined up before we go into Go Live, when we do on launch day and post-launch. So with that, we'll jump in. Please ask questions as we go through this presentation. And just a quick question. How many of you have launched a brand new site or rebrand in the past year or two? Has anyone done that recently?
Last year, no, definitely no.
Okay. Well, we're going to walk through some scenarios of what happens. Um, so the risk of not go live planning, it's really like jumping off a cliff without a parachute. You know you want to jump, you're ready to go, but there's a lot of challenges that can happen. Specifically, you can have a stressful cutover with code deployment the day of. We want to avoid deploying our code the day of a release into a new environment. So you can release your code into it, but as far as cutting over and saying, hey world, come look at my stuff, we should not compound things with trying to do a code release and all those activities the day of go live. That's different than a normal DevOps release cadence where you're normally releasing your code in to an existing environment. But when you have that big push off, be very cautious not to compound it with code deployment. Because if you do that, you're going to have rushed and incomplete testing. You're going to have instability, which will greatly impact the user experience. We often find that everyone's hurrying so much they've forgotten something, so a lot of miscommunication happens. There might be gaps in the platform, and basically what happens is you launch into failure. It's really a bad situation in which you've worked hard maybe for a year or longer or a very intense period as teammates to launch this new brand or this new site or this new version, and you find that you have a negative experience and it's really sour, and sometimes you get team burnout and you risk losing good team members because of the experience. And the worst part is if you fail to launch properly, you're going to damage your brand. um, and so we really want to avoid these pitfalls, and there's some simple things we can do to really bring this into fruition. Now when I say simple, I mean boring. We want to avoid having adrenaline rushes and crazy launch days. We want to have a very peaceful launch, where you can have a good go launch party afterwards. That's always fun to have a little launch party, right? But do that, we got to do some key things first. So one of the first things is, identifying who's a go live team. Do you have the right contact information, the right way to get them? So you really want to get the right team for the job. And it's not just a technical team. Um, and so we're going to talk through what that team dynamic looks like. And it should really be an extension of your governance committee. If you don't have a governance committee yet, I have an entire blog post and governance template that will list out how to set up a governance team. And it's not made up just technical folks. It's going to have your business stakeholders. Everyone has a different role. And you might have a single person who has multiple roles. That's okay. But there are some core roles you have to have in place to be successful when you establish a go live team. And you want to think about, who's my executive sponsor? This person is really a person saying that, hey, you know what? I'm in charge of the rebrand. I probably got the funding in place, or the site launch, and we're going forward. A business owner could be the same person. That's the person that maybe owns your day-to-day site core operation or really your public website. You want your project managers to keep everything organized. Then you get into more of the technical roles with your Sitecore admins and your network leads, because all these individuals have to work together because you're going to be dealing with DNS, security certificates, a lot of these core things in place. You want your dev lead there, your content manager, your marketing manager, and your internal communications lead. And we'll talk about why we want your communications lead there as well, because the business has to be involved. This is not only a change for your external individuals visiting your website and visiting what's you've got hosted in Sitecore. It's also a change for your organization. So it's very important that you communicate properly. We'll talk about that momentarily, what that looks like. Any questions so far about why we want to go live team and why they're spread across maybe, technical and non-technical individuals? And the main point here is that we have a whole team and we all have to work together to be successful, from content creation all the way through to executive sign-off. All right. So the go live team, you want to start talking about, well, what do we do now? We've got a team. We know we want to go live. Well, how do we do things the right way? Well, let's not do things the hard way. Let's talk about having a soft launch. So what does that basically mean? At the core of a soft launch is that you're going to get really all your 4Cs in place before you launch. When I talk about the 4Cs, it's your code, your content, configuration, and your cloud platform and infrastructure in place. So you're going to have everything ready before you launch, preferably a couple weeks before launch. Yes? Was there a question? All right, proceeding forward. So with your environment already in place and code deployed, what you're doing here is you're actually kind of already launched, but without allowing the public traffic in. This allows you time to test your network, reduce the launch risk with less moving parts at the same time. You're going to keep things pretty static. So by having that code content, maybe you have a content freeze in place. You can start testing a lot of your production networking with some dummy URLs. You're going to reduce a lot of complications by doing this. You're able to validate the site and all its integrations are in place. You can load test the site and really test your production infrastructure to make sure it's working. I've seen a lot of instances where people go live and they haven't load tested and they have a lot of issues as soon as traffic hits and end up down. And you can perform final testing across all your code and content. So it really gives you good confidence that nothing's changing. It's as if your website's already live, but it's just not receiving that public traffic. And what you do is when you have your go live day, all you're doing now is just pointing DNS traffic to it. So go live day, your launch day is really focused on, hey, I've already put everything up in production. It's already waiting there. Now I'm just going to finally let people in. So when you think about this, it's going to reduce that negative experience. You're going to validate that site function on the infrastructure. You can make sure that your edge device is working properly. So if you don't have Cloudflare as a web application firewall or CDN or something like that, this is an opportunity to test this. If there's an issue, you can switch back and forth. If you have an existing website, if not, you can launch into a new one here with easy DNS switching back. So you don't have to redeploy code because you know your code's already good. Because the past couple of weeks, you've already tested it, you've tested your content, and your launch day is the time for launch day is a lot less. And some people can even do a middle of the day launch because you don't have all this code and configuration and aspects. It really depends on your risk tolerance and what you're doing. But the goal is to get it where you have to just flip a switch to say, okay, I'm going to point my domain name to the new infrastructure. And to make it easier, really recommend that you use like a dummy URL to test things. So you'll still have your main URL. It might be mysite.com as your public facing URL that you want to go to. But you can set up a subdomain like test.mysite.com and have everyone in your organization, or even externally if they're properly allowed, to go to this URL, to crawl your website, see if there's any issues, and ensure that you're going to be in a good place. So, having a content freeze is really important. So getting your environment as static as possible for as long as you can really allows you almost like a blue-green scenario where you can switch over from your old infrastructure to new infrastructure, or if you're brand new to your Sitecore environment, you can literally just test everything out, and this is why we call it a soft launch. And the whole goal here again is to reduce risk and make launch day as easy as possible. So I'm going to stop here for a second, ask a question. Have any of you done a soft launch before, or have you done more of a hard launch, where day of you're deploying code and content for your new website? And don't be shy. Yeah. So day of, are you guys on launch day? Are you all uh, porting code over, doing that, or are you taking more of a soft launch methodology like I just discussed?
For me, I would say it would be a mix of both because these load testing and all they wouldn't like perform at before time. So I think a
Okay.
mix of both.
Okay. Do you think you can get to being fully soft launch where you don't have to mix?
Yeah, I should proceed to fully soft launch. Yes,
Oh, awesome. Yeah, and we have content migration as well, right? Content migration plays a big part of this. And
agreed.
oftentimes the biggest thing that's holding up a full soft launch is content, because you
Hmm.
want to have the latest content up to date. Um, and you don't want people duplicating content in both places, or maybe your old site and your new site to keep stuff up to date. So that's one of the bigger challenges for Go Live. So I have a whole different session on content migration planning that dives into that. So if you want to have that or talk through it, I also have a blog post about content migration. So go to the Bitset Byte and we can walk through that. So if you can adopt a soft launch methodology, you want to start talking about your communications plan. And really, it's not just day of, it's communicating before, during, and after. You might do a lot of promotion and say, hey, our new site's coming. During the launch, you might be communicating with internally, externally, and afterwards, you might have follow-up communications. So what that looks like is really going through and talking about a good communication plan that lists out milestones that trigger communication, such as, hey, we're 2 weeks out from launch. Let's send out our big razzle dazzle advertisement about our new website. You want to understand the parties you're communicating to, the date and time of the communication, because you want to be succinct on that. Who's the communication owner, the topic, and communication channels, because your audiences may vary and different audiences consume media differently. Some people might consume it on Slack, some might want more of a formal email. So it's important that you identify the different communications. For example, you might have a content freeze communication, and it's communication content editors, and the owner's a content manager, and the topics of contents now in freezes in place. That could be email and Slack. We could have a all on go live team communication to get ready to cut over, and the project owner is right there. And that might be an email and a Zoom call. And you might have a cut over complete email to announce to the company, hey, we've cut over, check out the new site. Or publicly, you might be sending out a larger communication. So doing these very simple things, we talked about identifying the go live team, figuring out what needs to be done for your soft launch, getting those parts together, and a communications plan. It seems very boring, but this allows you to smooth everything out because you know what's coming. You're over communicating, and we want to over communicate, right? So if you don't do that, you can end up with launch day and somebody forgot something, and now your website's down. It's very stressful. It's a very negative experience. It might be coding last second. You're just introducing a lot of risk. And so your communication planning really helps that to make sure everyone's on the same page. And speaking of everyone, you want to make sure you include your business. It's who needs to know what when we talk about a business readiness plan. It's not just IT. You have several stakeholders engaged, right? So we want to make sure when we talk about our business, business readiness, I always say, is our business, right? We want to include everyone in. IT does not do this by themselves. While many organizations say that everyone's in IT because we all touch computers all day long, the reality is there are some business stakeholders whose roles are different. They might be in marketing, um, for example, they have a different role. So we want to talk about what are those good change management principles we want to embrace. Like, we have the new website, but maybe it's a different workflow, or maybe we've introduced workflow. Maybe we've introduced new tools and technology that are different. Maybe we're using Content Hub, and that's going to impact our content authors and editors, right? So we want to really leverage a lot of demonstrations, training sessions, guides, and company-wide documentation to help the company be ready to support the website. Because if you don't support the content aspects and the marketing aspects and really get everyone working together, you're going to have a lot of problems in governing your website. Your Sitecore environment will likely fail if you don't have everyone working together. So you have to make sure your business is working with you. And that's why when we started this presentation, we talked about having a good go live team, and that it includes your executive sponsor, it includes the business. And your whole aim in working with the business is to really capture all the activities required for managing this change and managing the environment. So you want to really leverage your stakeholders from the Go Live team and your Sitecore governance committee. Again, if you don't have a Sitecore governance committee, get one. Meet quarterly. It's one of the biggest and best decisions you can make for being successful in your Sitecore environment. When you think about the business readiness plan, you might have like CMS training, um, different processes and training and documentation. Maybe you have a company-wide demo. And so it's really important that you get everyone engaged so they feel like they're all part of your environment. Because when you separate the business from IT, you end up with challenges like, oh, marketing might send out a communication. And if you're not ready and have maybe rate controls in place, you could have too large of an email campaign that crashes your website. Or you might miss important communications that need to go out to the website, or you might miss important tooling. And what we see a lot of times is we see a lot of third-party integrations that slow down a website because a different business unit said, oh, we want this thing to do something for us. And they never stopped to work with IT because you didn't build a rapport and that communication and collaboration. And so it could have been built in Sitecore or simply extending out the Sitecore platform. Maybe you want to have a members only portal. Um, if you don't communicate and collaborate, somebody in another business unit might go create that portal in a different technology. And now you have more technical debt, more challenges, and especially on governance, you have more challenges in governing your environment and platforms. So that's why it's so critical to make sure that your business is involved with you, that everyone feels a shared ownership of the Sitecore environment and work together successfully. And when you have that in place, you can start talking about, okay, we have our team. The business knows we have to change. Let's talk about what pre-launch looks like. So before we go live, what are the things we need to do to be successful? And a lot of this comes down to following that soft launch methodology where possible, listing out what you're going to do. Okay, well, let's talk about building our code, deploying that code, smoke testing, setting up dummy domains, and testing that dummy domain externally, and setting up your APM tools. Most of all of this is happening before launch. And we're doing this to make sure that we can really get the completed site up, soft launched, and tested so that go live is smooth. And this is all the stuff you need before you turn over things to make sure that you could go live if you wanted to. So you might say, okay, we're going to go live on April 1st. Everyone's excited. But here in the United States, April 1st is known as April Fool's Day, where people play jokes. Your marketing team says, oh no, we can't go live on April 1st. We have to go live on March 29th. Well, fortunately, if you've done your pre-launch activities, you can go live because everything's already up there and ready in the new environment. And with that, you're thinking about, okay, well, what else am I going to be doing once I've deployed my site up into the new production environment? Now, this is not going live yet. It's just making sure your code and content's up there. You can be doing like broken link testing, reviewing pages. This is really the site testing plan. So you want to make sure that you have a plan for testing your site and you're able to follow up with the right stakeholders, the right people who own the content, and walk through and test every aspect, including maybe third-party integration. The third-party integration and allowances to make sure things work is really, really important and oftentimes gets missed. We assume third parties are just going to work, but maybe we not allow them into our network properly. And so you go live and you wonder why your tools aren't working. So if you do a pre-launch with everything in place, now you're really leveraging that environment and testing everything. And with that, your load testing plan is very critical. You want to make sure that you're testing any code issues related to performance and remediating those. So if you have a code issue and you find it during load testing, don't fix it in production. We do never, ever, ever want to code in prod. We want to make sure that if you find something, it should go through all your stage gates, and yet you're fixing the code locally, deploying up to your development environment, testing the QA. Hopefully you have a staging environment, maybe UAT for your content authors, and then you go to production with all the appropriate testing. So if any issues, they keep going through the circle of testing your code and pushing it all the way along the stage gates. And you want to find testing tools that can emulate real users. And so SmartBear is a good tool. But if you can't do that, or use like something like BlazeMeter, JMeter can be utilized. JMeter is very common to use. But if you use some of the synthetic load, that's not kind of emulating real users and a real user journey, you want to make sure that you're adding a buffer. So I tend to go like 30% above. So if I'm going to test for 10,000 users, I'll put my load test actually 13,000 users to see that it's working well. And with this, you really want to focus on not just hitting your home page when you're load testing. You want to test your user journey. And a lot of tools allow you to do that, where you'll say, okay, I want to test the path to purchase. So if you sell something on your website, you can test the path to purchase via an automated tool and see if it's going fast enough. And I'd always recommend your homepage and path to purchase. So whatever is your main goal of your website, the thing you're supporting, you want to test that and the story of how a user gets to that final web page or destination. Doing so is going to reduce a lot of risk. You're also going to get a baseline for how things are performing, and that baseline can be reused again and again and again. So really critical for your pre-launch to have your load testing plan in place and start load testing your environment if you can with that soft launch methodology. And the last thing we talk about load testing is just make sure to document your actual plan and what your like response times are, because that's really a good measurement. And you could say, oh wow, we load tested our new production environment that is not live yet, and we found that at 5,000 current users, we have a problem. And the problem is isolated this one piece of code. Go fix that code, load test again, and you might be okay. Or you might need your load test, you might say you need to expand your infrastructure. Maybe you're in an Azure PaaS environment, you need more instances. That load testing plan, which you want to run your load test before you go live to public traffic, is going to help you fix a lot of code. In fact, I use load testing as a normal part of our release operations for any time we do a new deployment. So before we go live, we're load testing. And we're load testing maybe not in production, we might do it off hours, or we might do it in our staging environment, and we make our staging environment match production. So that way, you've got a one-to-one, you can test your code and your components and your parts. Don't forget about the 4 Cs, your code, your content, your configuration, and your cloud platform and infrastructure. You can load test those aspects. When you do a load test, you're hitting out and saying, is my configuration proper? Maybe you'll find out that you're not connecting to Solar Cloud properly. Is my content correct? Maybe your images are too long or not optimized. Is my code working? It might be, but it could be optimized for better delivery. And is your networking, your cloud platform, and infrastructure supporting your environment working? A good load test is going to elicit all these things out and make it easier. So I'm going to pause for a second. Any questions so far? Does this make sense as far as why we want to do this rigor and these boring activities up front?
Yeah, these make sense. Yeah, because I think we need to have proper planning with hoping that nothing goes wrong on the go live day.
Yeah, yeah. We want to stop hoping. We want to plan for the worst and hope for the best. We
Yeah,
want to,
exactly. Exactly. I agree on that point. Yes.
yeah. If your plan for go live is to pray and hope, something is very, very wrong, right? Nothing wrong with praying and hoping on go live day. We all do it, right? But let's overplan the best we can and be confident in our solution and be intimate with how it really works. So if you've gone through pre-launch activities and load tested your site and remediated any issues, you're now ready to have a go live review and sign off, typically known as a go, no go. And much like launching a rocket into space, this, is very similar, right? We think about, well, what do they do when they launch a rocket? Well, they get their go live team together. They're communicating with all the right people. They're advertising to the media, hey, we're going to launch our big rocket on this day. They're doing all their pre-launch activities and testing to make sure that the rocket does not blow up, especially if you have people on board, preferably. And then they say, okay, all the pre-flight checks are ready. Now we're ready for a go live review and sign off. And with that, this is really after everything's done. And you want to sit down and say, okay, this date and time with these people in attendance, we identified issues and concerns and takeaway action items. And our outcomes either we're going to go live or not. Because maybe on the issues we talked about after doing all our pre-launch activities, maybe there might be saying, hey, hold on a second. There's this one module that's not quite working. It might be good enough for go live, but there's risks if we do this. And somebody might say, those risks are too great to go live right now. We need to fix that. Or they might say, you know what? I don't feel like our marketing campaign is strong enough yet. And this is a business decision, right? It's nothing to do with technology. So let's wait for the marketing campaign to go out and let's push our go live date back by a couple of weeks. Or it might be, hey, we're ready. Everything, the risks are within reason. That we're ready to go live. We believe the training's going to catch up as far as our internal teams and business readiness. We're going to go live on this date. And with that in place, if you decide to go, you're ready to now go live. And that's when we get into launch day activities, the scariest part. And this is really where you get off the ground. Now, if you followed a soft launch methodology, you got the right teams together. I can't promise that nothing will go wrong on go live day because it could be a DNS issue, it could be something that got missed. But your risk of doing so is probably 90% reduced. So on launch day, we're really walking through, okay, what are we doing as far as cutover? And this is when we go into DNS cutover, sanity testing to make sure we cut over and everything still looks good. We have to propagate, our DNS and clear our caches, make sure our APM tools are working, and communicate out the successful launch, right? So if we've done the soft launch, notice I'm not doing any code deployments. I'm not deploying any last second content. All that's done before I cut over DNS. You see our website now lives here. And cut over means I could have the same domain name pointing to our current Sitecore environment. Let's say you have a Sitecore 8 environment. The domain name of mysite.com goes to that. But on go live day, we point to the Sitecore 10 environment. The user does not know, except they might have a different site experience. Unless you've not done a rebrand, they'll never know. But for you, you know that you're pointing to a whole new environment. And that you want to make sure that's a separate environment from your Sitecore 8 environment, whatever thing you're migrated from. And that's a critical part here, right? When you're running DNS swap over, you have to have a separate environment. I highly discourage you from trying to deploy over your existing infrastructure if you're doing a rebrand. It's much better to have a separate environment if you can, incur the cost to make sure that you have a separate environment to test. You maybe can do a blue-green scenario if it's just a Sitecore, like a rebrand versus an upgrade of your Sitecore environment. In that scenario, you might have your content management system staying the same. You might just changing your look and feel. But if you're changing any templates or any data structures, your CMS really should be a new CMS and a new Sitecore environment. That allows you to reduce a lot of risk. And that allows you to go live on launch day by just saying, okay, what used to live over here now lives over here in a new place. New sites moved over with all the new code, all the new components. And also, if you do that, if you separate the environments, you're more likely to get better code. You might rethink your architecture and say, you know what, we're going headless. Let's look at our modules and make sure we're not doing a lot of bad interdependencies on the back end, and that our front end React and Next.js layers are responding the way they should. And with this, you have to have a rollback plan. So if something goes wrong, how do we cut back quickly to the old website? Don't shut off your old website, right? Leave it on for a little bit. Make sure that things are working well, and that you can roll back to if you need to. You need to communicate a failed launch, do root cause analysis, determine what went wrong, remediate, and then have another go, no-go discussion to go back to the new environment. So if something goes wrong, swing back to the old environment can happen very quickly. Users will have less impact, and you're going to be much happier because now you're in a better place. And with that in place, then you can go into the post-launch. But the whole goal of the launch day activities is to make it as simple as possible, the least amount of moving parts, have a rollback plan, and if you have separate environments, you're not in a fail forward situation where you have to fix everything live in production. I've been there, some of you have been there. It's really stressful, right? And that's a great way to damage your brand, damage your teammates, and damage the business. We don't want to do that because then the business will say, oh, Sitecore is horrible. No, Sitecore is not horrible. Our plan on going live was, and that's why people might give Sitecore a bad name, which is an uphill battle for you all. So your go live is really critical, um, for the optics and people viewing your site in a good light. Might be public users too. If you have a bad go live, um, people might talk about it, and that's going to hurt your brand and your identity. And internally, you do not want to have to fight and try to rationalize and say Sitecore is not good. You want people to have confidence in your platform. And that confidence should be built up by the whole team working together. So when that whole team works together, everyone has shared ownership and going live successfully. It's easier to get into that soft launch methodology because you can scare them into saying, listen, if we don't soft launch this, the risk of failure is greatly increased. And that's something the business does not want to have. So if you were successful on your launch day, then you can go into post-launch activities, and that's really about seeing an orbit. We've launched our rocket, right? We went through all of our planning. We launched our rocket. It's up in space. We're talking to our astronauts where our website is, and we want to stay in orbit. So to do that, we want to make sure that we're doing any additional communications and outreach. We're making sure we leverage our application performance monitoring tools. That might be like a New Relic or a Datadog to make sure that the site's performing well. We might be having synthetic ping checks with Pingdom and monitoring to make sure that there's any issues, because it could be an internet issue, a load balancer go down, that you can get on top of that quickly, right? And I want to be clear, it's not uncommon to keep the previous environment operational for a couple of weeks until you make sure that everything's stable. Some organizations keep it up for 60 days. And the reason they do that is to make sure that, hey, if something went wrong in the new website, they have something to compare against. And worst case scenario, if something's really, really wrong, let's say we're 2 weeks into code, already being deployed, you've launched your site, everything seems to be going well, and you find one weird thing in Solar that messes up something, or one piece of code that is wrong, and it's catastrophic. You can switch back to the old website to at least keep yourself operational until things are resolved. And if not already part of your Sitecore governance, make sure you have a clear on-call rotation and escalation path. You have to manage a new environment. It's a really living, breathing uh, thing you have to take care of. And everyone has to meet regularly. All because you've launched your site does not mean you're done. Once you've launched your site, you're up there, you're going to repair it. It's kind of like the International Space Station, right? You have to repair it. You got to get up there and repair it to make sure it's still operational. So if you do these things, really communicate, get the right stakeholders involved, you're going to reduce your risk. You're going to have more fun as an IT team because instead of fixing stuff all day and trying to recover from a failed launch, you can start building new modules. You're going to be understanding your marketing and business teams better and more likely to build things together as one team rather than having little islands of applications all over the place. So with that, I want to pause and, just say thank you. I know a lot of boring stuff here, a lot of common sense, but this really is meant to be a guide, a step-by-step guide that you can take back into your organizations, have front of mind, and really say, listen, we need to talk about our go live and sit down with your business stakeholders and business owners, you know, walk them through these steps and talk about the value this adds in reducing risk and maximizing your go live so that marketing is happy, everyone's happy, and your business is able to support you and you're able to support them. So I want to pause there and beyond saying thank you for listening to me today, really answer some questions. We can talk about any kind of go live situations. I've probably been a part of 200 to 300 go lives in my career. So I'm happy to walk through what's worked well and what hasn't worked well and share some interesting stories.
Any questions, guys? And I think I would say that it's a really good presentation and an interesting topic for me because this comes with an experience because I think mostly after 11 years experience before Sitecore with me, right? I did few deployments and a few were good, as in like not build and release DevOps. Other than that, we do have a go live planning as well, like go no meetings and other things. But I think to ensure everybody is at one place or on the same page, then we need to have a proper communication in place. So I think this is really good presentation. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank, no, thank you for having me. Does anybody have any questions or things I can answer for them?
You're free to ask questions, guys. Any questions?
You can put them in chat as well if you need to. All right, I either put everyone to sleep with my voice. Oh, there's no
No, no.
questions this time. We will be sharing out this deck so you have it. I want this to be a tool for you all. I'm also going to blog about this. You have all the steps listed in like a template you can download and use. But I highly encourage you to go to the bits.byte.com. I have a ton of information up there on governance planning and a bunch of things to help support you. The boring stuff allows you to do fun stuff. So I always love to say that because, this is kind of boring stuff in the sense of well, it's not the cool, shiny technology. No, it's the stuff that allows you to play and do shiny new technology and have fun. We want to get all the crises off of our plates so we can have a fun day building new things together. So if there are no questions, please feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. I'm active on Twitter or X. I'm also, active through my blog. Um, But if there are no questions, just thank you for spending time with me today. Hope you and your families are well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you, guys. We'll meet in the next presentation. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye all.